I cannot be here.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You might be celebrating.
To the cameras.
Pencils, this should be the page.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at the June 4th meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of the exits around the room in case of emergency, and join me as we reaffirm our fealty to Old Glory.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is a new public hearing for the Anderson Center Telecommunication Tower. I get a motion to open the public hearing.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Applicants are here, represented by someone different tonight. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Thomas Puckner of the Phillips Lytle Law Firm, and I'm appearing for New Singular Wireless LLC, which is also known as AT&T, to you and me.
And could you spell your last, please sit down. Could you spell your last name for me?
P as in Peter,
U-T-N-E-R?
U-C-H-N-E-R, and I have a card here that I'll give you.
Thank you. Puckner, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Puckner. In the interim from the last meeting, we've had some revised submissions, some explanations. It appears that the tall structure is owned by the Anderson Center, which was not information we had at the last meeting. So before I go to the board to discuss the application, let's go to our consultants. Mr. Sotero, any further comments?
Liz had sent, we just got the revised submission yesterday. So Liz very quickly looked at it, and she did issue an email yesterday, and she had a couple comments. Most of our previous comments had been addressed. There was a couple of housekeeping items, such as we have to have a performance guarantee as far as the removal of the pole. So a couple other things in terms of providing the liability insurance. And it looks like those items that she had put in her June 3rd email have been incorporated into the resolution.
They have been. Any comments, Ms. Polidoro?
Just that all of the outstanding items are appropriate conditions of approval.
Thank you. We also added a condition for Mr. Groninger, but he'll be free to address that with the applicant shortly. Yeah. So let me start to the left. Mr. Signet, any comments?
No comment.
Mr. Murphy? Mr. Groninger?
I think the concern I have here is this has never been reviewed by the fire department, et cetera. In other words, this was always just viewed as I'll call it a telephone pole that happened to have a local communications for like your little pocket cell things. No one ever knew this was a commercial thing and that there was a generator there. One of the things we always ask for when there's a generator, how is it powered? In other words, is there a flammable fuel on site? If so, how much?
Yeah, and I anticipated your question. It's an important question. There is a generator. It's a diesel generator. It's used for backup, emergency backup only. It's tested about once a month for 20-25 minutes. No one actually comes to the site. It's tested remotely from their operations center. It is a 250-gallon tank. It's a double-walled tank with interstitial monitoring, which is if you have two walls, there's a space in between. There's a monitor in between the spaces so that if the interior tank has a problem, it's picked up.
Right.
That's monitored remotely from the operations center as well, 24 hours a day.
Okay. I would like to have wherever that tank is, I mean, obviously, it should be on the drawing here somewhere. I'm looking at, let's see, which page am I on? This is your new site plan. I'm trying to find a reference.
They're on the bottom right.
Right. It's coordinates. No, anyway, it's the one that shows the chain link fence and whatnot. I did make an earlier comment, and certainly there's plenty of room to get in there for access. It's like a 14-foot opening there for access, it looks like.
Page CO1.
Okay,
Thank you.
It's hard to read on this small.
Yeah,
plan.
because these are reduced prints I have here. So at any rate, I believe it's appropriate to put on there the amount of fuel that's there and where it's located.
Okay, so you
Okay.
want a revision to the plans that includes the amount of,
Well, whatever plans are, ultimately it should be, since this is actually owned by Anderson School, which should be on the set of plans they have, like in their engineering facilities room, and also a copy of the fire department should see where that is. In other words, if they ever responded, they need to know there's a tank that could catch fire. So
So-
it's appropriate to have that on a site plan.
You're revising sheet CO1 to include this note, and you're also asking them to provide a courtesy copy to the fire department.
Correct. Because I don't think the fire department will get another copy of it the way it stands.
Okay.
And that would be
Of
Statsburg.
Just sheet CO1 or the entire site plan set?
Well, assuming that's where they're going to show the fuel tank, I mean, they have everything else. It's just really this one thing that I am concerned if a fireman comes up there and he doesn't know there's 250 gallons of diesel fuel that can blow.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I've just added a draft condition.
As a
on
condition.
Submission of sheet CO1 to Statsburg Fire District.
Right. Okay.
thank you for that clarification, that's good.
Mr. Pugner, before I go on with the board, when this was approved in 2012, you know, as a colleague said, more or less for walkie-talkies, internal use on the site.
Okay.
At some point, it was turned into a commercial cell phone tower. Do you know any of the details of how that, what the construction that was involved? Were there AT&T trucks that went out to do these, or
Well, it wouldn't have been AT&T trucks, it would have been their vendors.
contractor?
They
Okay.
use contractors. But, so there's a shelter that has to go into place and the generator. Usually, typical installation is a pad.
Right, and there are pads there.
It's laid down, equipment shelter that's typically modular, depending on access. Most of my work is in Adirondack Park on top of mountains, so usually we don't get to do the easy builds. But, so typically it's a modular shelter that's just plunked in place. I mean, I'm very much simplifying, okay? But in the generator, more and more often we're seeing them with generator. Cables run across what's called an ice bridge to the tower structure. In this case, it's a wooden pole, and then there's probably conduit there that goes up to the equipment. The equipment is mounted on them. That's
There's no catch, and the reason why I was asking was, I was just wondering, I took a site visit myself. I
Yep.
know all the Anderson people pretty well. How is the road maintained during the winter? Do you know? Is there?
that I
plowed?
don't know. Generally, that's a landlord responsibility. Again, just from other sites, it's usually a lease-specific thing, but typically the company line is landlords maintain that, and if they have other equipment there, they need to get to it also.
I'm just thinking about for the fire department during the winter when we have heavy snows.
Okay.
When you said, what triggered my interest was when you said it's tested remotely, so that there's not actually someone going there periodically. It's done by remote.
Well, I'm sure someone goes there periodically, but the monthly testing for the generator, that specific thing, is done on a remote basis. But, you know, if there's a concern about access in the winter, I'm happy to have a condition that covers that, whoever
I
that.
just want to make
however that's
certain
done.
that the fire department, in the unlikely event that there's some sort of mishap, a fire, I
Yeah.
want to make certain that the fire department can actually get out there to battle it. And particularly since, as my colleague has noted, there's gallons of fuel stored there. You don't want to have a conflagration even during the winter
Right.
caused by something. So we may want to add that as a condition too, that the roadway be kept clear during the winter of.
Is that also on sheet CO1?
No, that won't be sheet CO1. Let me go over to the rest of my colleagues, and I'll figure out which sheet that is in a moment. Ms. Dexter, any comments?
No.
Mr. Oliver?
No comment.
Mr. Marsigliano?
No comment.
Then I better get to work. Do you have your sheets pulled out?
So CO1 shows an access drive.
just a sheet in front of it would be the best, that.
And it says here on the notes that there's going to be an inspection approximately 2 times a month by AT&T technicians.
So there is someone going out there regularly.
Yes.
Then I guess we can assume that the roadway is kept free, because if he's going out twice monthly, he could have to go out during the winter months as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Then, is there any public comment on this application? And there being none, before I close the public hearing, we should conclude seeker. So who has this file? We'll have to read part 2 of the EAF.
I do. Part 2, impact assessment. Lead agency is responsible for the completion of Part 2. Answer all the following questions in Part 2 using the information contained in Part 1 and other materials submitted by the project sponsor or otherwise available to the reviewer. When answering the questions, the reviewer should be guided by the concept, have my responses been reasonable in considering the scale and context of the proposed action? 1, will the proposed action create material conflict with the adopted land use plan or zoning regulations?
No.
No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No.
We can just, if you want.
Will the proposed action have impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area, CEA? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies or public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No. On to part 1?
That's all.
That's all? Okay.
And just as for the record, I should add that when we say no or impact to historic resources, we did circulate this to Dutchess County Planning as well as to the town of Esopus. Both had no objections. In the case of county planning, they said it was a matter of local concern. In addition, the applicants provided in their narrative a well-argued rationale that there would be no visible impacts because of the height of the existing trees around and the nature of the topography in this general area. For those of us who've been up and down the river, you can't see it as it exists now, and you're not adding that much. So we did do our due diligence in this issue. There being no other further public comment, may I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And who has this resolution?
I do.
Did you, wait, do we need to have the, did you add, can we get your new conditions up here?
Sure.
Thank you. Resolution granting site plan approval for co-location of an existing tall structure, Anderson Center for Autism, new singular wireless PCS LLC. Resolution number 14-9A, whereas, now therefore it be resolved that the planning board adopts a determination of non-significance finding that the project as proposed will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and the draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. And be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants site plan approval to permit the collection of 3 antennas, 6 remote radio units, 1 surge arrestor, 2 cabinets, and an existing tall structure as depicted on plans prepared by Tectonic entitled Anderson School, FA number 101-25939, Pinnacle Wireless AT&T. Last revised May 30th, 2014, and authorized the chair to sign the site plan after compliance with the following conditions. 1, payment of all fees in escrow. 2, revision of the site plan to include a notation indicating the time and day of the week the generator will be exercised. 3, revision of the site plan to show existing lighting. 4, revision of the site plan to include a notation indicating that the telecommunication facilities will be dismantled and removed by the applicant and/or the owner of the premises when they are no longer used or needed. 5, submission of a performance guarantee in an amount acceptable to the planning board engineer and in form, substance, and manner of execution acceptable to the town attorney to cover the costs of the removal of the tower. 6, submission of an easement in form, substance, and matter of execution acceptable to the town attorney granting the town of Hyde Park the right to enter upon the premises to dismantle and remove the tower in accordance to Town Code 101-17B. Submission, number 7, submission of the liability insurance acceptable to the town in accordance with Section 101-20 of the Town Code. 8, revision of the site plan to include a note indicating the quantity and type of on-site fuel storage. 9, submission of sheet C01 to Statsburg Fire District.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Polidoro, before we vote, do you want to explain about the insurance requirements?
Sure. The code was written at a time when people were worried that the towers were going to fall over. And so it requires that a telecommunications tower applicant provide liability insurance for falling pieces and for the tower itself. And the applicant did provide insurance, it just didn't, the town attorney has not had a chance to look at it, so we just kept it as a condition.
Just want to make sure you're aware of that. Again, because this is a co-location on what was not approved originally, we have to go through these motions because we're basically now bringing it into conformance. That's all.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, good. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Please tell your colleague, Mr. Walters, it was a pleasure working with him.
I will do
And
that.
since he put it into the record last time that there might have been delay on our part, I'll repeat what I said last time. The law that he was referencing really applies only to co-location, because in the town's view, this wasn't a co-location because it was never approved in the first place. There was just some delay in getting it to this board. But you saw we had one meeting, this is our second, you're out. So we try to cooperate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good luck on your drive back.
Thank you all.
Next item on the agenda is a new public hearing for site plan extension of site plan approval for Jeffrey Groves Estates located at 19 and 31 North Cross Road. Make it a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, Louis Kaufman for the applicant.
Sure, it'll-
In this case, just to remind everyone watching in TV land, the site plan approval lapsed once, and this was a unique project. There are 9 individual homes and 45 townhomes. The site plan only applies to the 45 townhomes, not to the rest. The subdivision already exists, so it can't lapse. In this instance, they need extensions because the way our code reads, you need to start construction or work within the first year and then have it finished by the second year. And due to market conditions, we're still looking at a non-favorable economic climate for the project to move forward. So any comment from the board?
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. It's 38 townhouses.
Oh, I'm sorry, not 45.
I would love 45. Is that going to be part of the extension? I would really appreciate it.
No, I'm afraid we can't give you more density. That's all the density that's allowed there. My apologies. It's
No
been a while since I've reviewed the file. First, any comment from the board? This was relatively recent that we did this. And then is there any public comment? Anyone from the audience who'd like to speak about this application? There being none, may I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And who has this file?
I do.
Do we have to reaffirm seeker before we?
It should be in the motion,
Is it?
I mean, the resolution.
It's just an extension,
Right,
so we don't need to reaffirm, but I think I put something in there about it.
you did.
Resolution to grant one-year extension of all deadlines pursuant to Section 108-9.6A of the Town Code, Jeffrey Groves Estates, June 4th, 2014, Resolution 68-12B. I'm just going to read the first one. Basically, this just reiterates what you had stated, Michael. Whereas on March 6, 2013, the Planning Board reapproved North Cross LLC's final site plan approved for a townhouse development known as Jeffrey Groves Estates, located on 25.17 acres in the neighborhood district. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby grants a one-year extension pursuant to section 108-9.6A of the code of the time in which the applicant must commence construction to and including June 14th, 2015, and the time in which to complete construction to and including June 14th, 2016. And there will be no written or verbal notification from the planning board office to the applicant at such time as the extension expires. Any request for an extension of the deadline set forth herein must be submitted to the planning board at least 30 days in advance of said dates. Do I have a second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much. I understand there was some consideration given to whether or not it could have been a 2-year extension.
This is what happened. I think that most of us, all of us up here were happy to do that, but we advertised this, unfortunately, as being a 1-year extension, and we're required by law to follow what's advertised. We can't change because then the public could have theoretically had come out here and said, no, you can't do it for more than 1 year.
Which is perfectly understandable, but if it is allowable to republish, and I would obviously pay the costs, and have a 2-year extension, I would be perfectly amenable to having that put off for 1 month, but I don't know if that's an option that is allowable. I mean, if it's a matter of the publication, and the publication has a cost, or, whatever that
I
was.
believe we could amend this resolution. We just have to set a public hearing for it to amend the resolution to extend it for an additional year.
Well, I think we wouldn't adopt it tonight, is what you're saying, and we'd.
I would love to have it adopted tonight, but I'm told its publication is a
Right,
problem.
so, I mean, we could just adopt it 1 year, and then when the next extension comes up, you could request a 2-year extension.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or, I mean, otherwise, we could do.
I guess a bird in the hand is, yes. Thank you.
Otherwise, we could hold off on this tonight, and then set a new public hearing.
Yeah, no, I thank you very much for your consideration, and I will see you next year unless unless you see the for sale signs up and have the marketing and plan in place. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did we vote?
We voted.
Okay.
Yeah.
We would have had to have somehow rescinded the vote.
Yeah, we got 7 yeses.
In addition, he's close to lapsing, so I think it's wiser to do this. And next time we'll remember to advertise it for 2 years
Well,
instead.
the request should indicate the
The request
amount.
indicated only a year, that's why. The next item on the agenda is Hyde Park Assisted Living Facility, formerly known as the Hobo. Mr. Rogers, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're seeking a second extension of 90 days, in which time to complete conditions. This is different than, just for everyone's edification, the last application, he has an approved and signed site plan. In this case, so that's why we have to have public hearings in order to extend approval. In this case, the site plan has not been signed yet, and under our code, we're allowed to give 2 90-day, almost 3-month extensions, so you're seeking the second one.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to go through that rigmarole. Is there anything you'd like to update us on?
One of the delays were the remediation of the contamination up to the site, and I just received 2 weeks ago, about 2.5 weeks ago, the DEC closure reports. Oh, wow. So the whole, the remediation is completed and approved.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So the bank's ready to move forward. That's all completed.
Even though this isn't really part of this portion of it, I believe that if Ms. Moss were here, she'd be saying, can we get a copy of those closure reports for our files? Because she likes to have as many things in there
Sure.
as possible.
Send over.
It helps later on down the line, too, for Don Westermeyer to have seen our building inspector, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
So you can get those over to her anytime. That'd be appreciated. Any comments from the consultants? Just briefly. I know about this, but the rest of the board doesn't.
We were sent an updated set of plans because we wanted to check, the conditions so that when the maps were ready to be signed, we were all set. So we had asked for the most current plan for the septic system so we could just see, the size of it, because we wanted the architect to at least put where the septic system was going to be on the site plans that were going to be signed. So the engineer working on the septic system sent us a copy of the septic system plan, and the septic system plan, is big. It's a very large, septic system. In fact, it's going to take up about an acre. So there's going to be some additional clearing in the back that's going to be need to be done, and I think that, Jim, I think it's pretty close to being approved by the county health department, from what I understand. Is that right?
Being approved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very close to, it's just, I believe within the next 2 weeks, I'm
Okay.
hoping for it to be approved.
So, what that created is the fact that they're going to be clearing an additional acre in the back, and we have the stormwater requirements because we're an MS4 community, that if you disturb over an acre, you're supposed to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So between the about the acre that they have to clear for the septic and the other work that they were already doing, they're over the acres. So, we have to ask for the stormwater pollution prevention plan. So what we had suggested to the applicant was that because this is the last 90-day extension, that at least try to get a preliminary SWIP in before the 90 days expires. And if we can get it all approved and done before the 90 days, that's fine. But if we couldn't, that at least we could reapprove, the project with some new conditions, knocking off some of the old ones because, they're done. And then if we had to add the one for the completion of the SWIP, that would allow the time clock to be started over again, because we don't want Mr. Rogers to lose the approval. So that's what we suggested to the applicants, and I believe that that's, the course of action that they're going to take. Jim, unless you have anything different to add.
Can I say something? I'm not looking for the time clock to continue. I need to get.
Well, no, neither are we, but we don't,
No.
we want to make
Yeah.
sure you have enough time to do your SWIP, otherwise we
But
can't extend, this is your last extension that we can do.
yeah, the thing is, you guys, we reviewed we did the preliminary waste treatment area initially in last August. And we did discuss the size of the property. It is probably close to an acre. But we also discussed, the other work that I am doing on the property is benefiting the area. I'm taking out almost 80% of the parking lot.
I know.
I'm not adding to the situation.
This is why we were eager to, I shouldn't say
Right,
eager,
but I
why we
mean,
were
to
approved.
hold up a project for something that I'm doing positive.
They need to explain that it's not punitive, and this also, the state law that requires
Yeah, it's
the
not-
SWIP.
it's
This is
not-
not our.
Yeah, I know the
code.
SWIP, but like Pete said, we're close to an acre.
No.
Well, you're just over the acre. And the other thing is...
Not just the rear, it's everything you're doing on the site has to be less than an acre.
Oh,
And
okay.
before, everything you were doing was less.
Okay.
It's not that the
And-
stormwater, that the sewage area, or, wastewater area, is an acre. It's the combination now with that, plus what you were doing, even though it's reducing the impervious and
Yeah, the whole
improving
thing,
the site.
right.
Yeah, and you are, and that's all, and everything,
Yeah.
and what you just said, is factored into that SWIP. And we should work with your engineer, because there could be certain things that we could waive, because it will be classified as a redevelopment site. So there are some options there where we could try to make it simpler. The one thing in the back, with all that additional acre that's being cleared, the only thing that I'm a little concerned about is looking at, the grades, now that water's going to be coming down off of the hill, and from the contours that are shown on the map, it looks like it comes down off the hill and then it heads to the property on the north. So we just, now it's, woods, so when that gets all cleared off, it's going to increase, the runoff. We just got to make sure that whatever's going to the property on the north, that there's not any increase in water
Okay,
going to that. So
understand.
we want to work with you, believe me, this is a great, project.
Yeah.
And when we saw it, this is just something that we have to go do, or else we could get in trouble if we
Yeah,
don't.
no, I understand. I'm just,
And by the way,
every time I turn around, I got another issue.
We understand, we understand.
well, part of that obviously was the fact that no one knew at the time that there was the fuel contamination. That's
Yeah.
what really set you back.
That's what set me back a couple
It
of months.
was, or more than a couple. It's been,
Yeah.
I think, more like 6.
That should, right.
But while I don't do SWIPs, that's for the engineer, it's my understanding that some of what you're doing will be adding to, so I guess I'll call it credits.
Yes, sir.
What you're doing, because
Yeah, because
you're
you're taking
reducing
out
the
pavement,
impervious. You're
yeah.
taking 80% of the parking lot out, so, but when you take the trees out, you increase sheet flow runoff, which is what the SWIP is
Right.
designed to make sure that we can know how to mitigate, evaluate, know how to mitigate it. There's runoff on other parcel, because you're not really allowed for new development or
You can't
redevelopment.
increase the runoff
Right.
onto any adjoining parcels.
So if you guys can work together and get that done
Oh, yeah,
before this,
100%.
Okay.
then we'll be very happy about it, I assure you. I also meant to, I think I've mentioned it to you before, but are you aware that we have what's called a 485B exemption for redevelopment, new development?
No, sir.
You'll need to talk to the the tax assessor, because there's a form you fill out, but anytime that you spend over $50,000 in our town for redevelopment or new development, you can apply to get your property tax done on a sliding scale, so that the first year, whatever your assessed value is, you pay a property tax on 10%, and the next year it's 20%, so that after 10 years, you're paying the full value of your property taxes. But when you mentioned to me about going to the IDA, I realized you may not have known about our own town exemptions on this.
Right. No, I didn't know that.
There's a county and a town one, they're both adopted. The town one, you just go through the tax assessor, there's a form you fill out, but I know you're going to spend more than $50,000 on this, so you pretty much automatically qualify, but you still have to fill out the form for it, that's all.
Okay, great.
And that should be able to help you mitigate your costs as you go through the first few years on this, or
Great.
first 10 years on this,
Thank
okay?
you.
You're welcome. Any other comments from the board? Who has this file?
I do.
Thank you.
Resolution granting second extension of time to meet conditions of amended site plan approval, Hyde Park ALF. Resolution 17-13D. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the applicant a second 90-day extension of the time to meet the conditions of the amended site plan approval as set forth in resolution number 17-13B from June 2nd, 2014 to September 2nd, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So we hope we get all this resolved beforehand, but if there's any danger, make a request for us to amend this and change the conditions for what you've met, et cetera, and that starts the clock over again. I don't want to extend you out forever, but I don't want you to lapse either.
No, no. All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I get him to sign it?
Next item on the agenda is Dollar General.
Take care.
Applicants are seeking site plan approval to erect a new structure, a new retail store at 1049 Violet Avenue. And as a reminder to any of the audience, that would be on the west side of 9G. Welcome back. Can you please state your name again for the record?
Absolutely. Todd Hamula.
Since we last saw you, you've revised your submission. Oh, you're right. You revised your submission. Do you want to go over anything or discuss it? I hope the board's had a chance to review everything. We got this pretty early on.
Great. I'll just highlight the three changes that are of significance. We removed a total of 2 parking spaces from the parking lot. The one that was closest to the street that was technically a little bit in front of the building. And we moved the one that is furthest to the back of the site, so we lessened the parking space count by 2. And we also incorporated the stone material in the building facade as a base material at the recommendation at the last planning board meeting.
Thank you. And you took a more close look at stormwater, I see, as well. But
Everything work out okay with the stormwater and drainage and everything?
We did. We've been working hard with the town engineer on the stormwater. I know the town engineer walked the site. We walked the site again. They had a meeting and went through the calculations, very conservative calculations. And I understand that they're very close to just a couple of minor items that need to be addressed and cleaned up, but nothing that the engineers can't put their heads together and work through.
Good, good.
Mr. Sachel, you want to make some comments on this?
Yeah.
No.
I think Todd pretty much summed it up as far as the storm drainage goes. I think we are making good progress. They had a conference call Tuesday, I believe, or Monday, and they went through the calcs. There's still a little bit more work to do. There's some field verification because they did find that there was an existing 8-inch pipe that does discharge to the back of the property, which does give them some some credit that they can take for flow going off-site. So they're going to locate that pipe so we know exactly where it is. And similar to the last application, there will be some discharge off the site because it's, as you know, the previous concept was to try to keep all the water on the site and have it work by infiltration. But as we discussed the last time, based upon the soils that are out there, they're poor soils. And so now, it's modeling to have some of the discharge go off-site, but again, similar to what we just discussed, that any water that goes off the site after development has to be the same as what currently goes there. So we're working through that, and as I said, I think we're making pretty good progress on it. So up to this point, that was what we had focused on because that was what we felt was the biggest issue. We hadn't really gone through, the site plan in terms of normal things such as, do we have enough parking? Is the lighting okay? I mean, it looks like it's okay, but I'm going to ask them because ask our office just to go through and do our normal check, and then we'll issue a letter. I'm going to say by the end of this week or early next week with some of Andy Learn's comments and what the two engineers had discussed as far as the drainage, and then we'll also incorporate anything else that was in there in terms of the normal things as far as the number of parking spaces and that kind of stuff. I think that the setbacks are all fine. You guys are going to look at the elevations of the building, the landscaping, and so we're making progress.
That's what we like to hear. In addition, I went through and did a detailed analysis myself of the first set of plans. I haven't gone back through, but I didn't see any lighting issues. I saw mostly a code compliant structure, et cetera.
Yeah.
The issues I did have, we brought out to them. Ms. Polidoro, any comments? No. We start to my right. Mr. Marsiglio, any comments?
No comments.
Mr. Oliver?
Thank you for adding that stone on the base material of the structure. Did you guys come up with any more ideas about the parking area, the surface, permeable asphalt, or?
So we did, on this recent submission, we did take out the pervious pavement, and we put in 2 structures in the parking lot that are dry wells that then are piped into the stone base below the parking lot. So the storm drainage is still the same conceptually, except we remove the pervious pavement portion to that, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dexter?
I'm happy to hear that you're making progress on the drainage. I think that's really positive. I was reviewing the files today, and the only thing that just kind of popped out at me, which I hadn't really quite seen before, was on the elevations. When I look at what appears to be like if I'm driving north and I'm looking at the south face,
Right.
it's a very large, blank, monolithic, single color box just jumps right out at you. And we have, in the past, tried to make some kind of cosmetic improvements to voids like that so that they don't look so barren. And it's the same thing on the, as you're going south, it's just not as bad, right. It's not as bad on the south because I guess you've got, the entrance, but it still kind of pops out at you as.
So I think on the elevations, what we did, because we also looked at that with all the heavy vegetation that is here, we do turn the corner with an architectural element.
Okay.
But your point is well taken. The rest of the building facade, we really tried to utilize or count on the benefit of the adjacent lot with the way that it's appearing today, so that it's not designed the same as the elevation that faces the parking lot or that faces the road.
Yep.
So we did turn the corner. Maybe we should consider turning the corner a little bit more. Or would you like us to take a look at that elevation and treat it similar to the front facade?
You know, I'm not sure, I'm not the expert, but I do know that we did have an earlier project that came through, and it also had kind of it was a big blank space. It's actually right down the road from here.
Okay.
And it had all kinds of trees and shrubs in front of it, and
Right.
like 2 years after approval, they went through and they cut the whole thing down, and now there's just this big blank, really not attractive facade. So I don't know what the solution is.
Right, right.
But, you know, hopefully there would be an inexpensive way to kind of treat it so that if the next owner or if someone decides, you know, to clear it out a little bit,
Are
that
you
it won't be
talking
that.
about both facades or just?
Just the south
Mostly the south,
facing.
but, you know, if they found something that could easily be kind of attached to the whole thing or incorporated into the whole thing, you know, fake windows. I mean, I don't know exactly what you could do without.
Your interior layout, you have, I'm going to guess, you probably have cabinets, freezer cabinets, something already there, so you don't need windows.
Correct, correct. Yep, they would be fake if we did put windows on there. We'll take a look at it, and I'll come up with a response to the comment at the public hearing. I mean, it's a fair comment. You know, I look at that as counting that the vegetation is going to remain.
Right.
You're right, I can't predict the future. It could, 2 years from now, maybe something would pop up here and you take it all down.
We get some big storms through here, and, you know, we could just knock them all down.
Sure, sure. Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Groninger?
Okay, just a couple minor things. Your statement of findings on May 8th, and the other statement of findings on May 16th, they describe the site as on the eastern side of Olive Avenue. Should be the western side. Somebody just picked that one up, I don't know. The only other thought I might have on this, I am assuming you have freezer cases. That's an area noted for losing power. You may want to consider a generator. If you do, we're going to ask the questions about
Sure.
what's the fuel source for it, that
Sure.
type of thing.
Sure.
Will it be in an external shed? If it's a shed, we need to see, got to be on the site plan.
Okay.
Excuse
You
me.
probably are going to need a generator there.
That's an excellent point Mr. Groninger's making. I believe it was just 2 years ago, we had a freak snowstorm in Halloween, and the power was out up and down 9G for 5 days.
No kidding.
It doesn't happen that often. I said freak for a reason, but when it happens, it happens.
There goes your freezer load.
Leaves were still on trees, and when the snow, we had 6 inches of snow, and it caused all sorts of haywire. So just as a fair warning, most of the businesses, actually, a lot of the businesses just in general in our town have generators for that reason.
I'll check in with Dollar General to see how they would plan
Sure.
for that. I know that they do have locations where they do have generators on site, or whether or not they would treat this as maybe bringing in a temporary generator for.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of other things, like the culinary for their antenna system on top of the roof, their game plan was, we will have a roll-in generator in 2 hours.
Right.
So, yeah, we'll lose the cell phone service for a while, or the backup batteries will cover. But you can't run batteries for your freezers.
Right, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Murphy?
No, I have no comments.
Mr. Stigna?
No, I have no comments.
Then, okay, let me just make a couple of comments here just for the edification of the audience and the board. For stormwater, and Mr. Sotero can correct me, but when we say that the pre-development flow has to match the post-development flow, it's not just the flow itself, it's that the sheet flow that exists now, if it's directed, the directed flow can't exceed it either. Am I correct? So since this will now be directed flow, that's why the site's been presenting some issues. But if you guys are working that through, then that's the important part of it. I noticed that you added the storage tanks so that you're not just relying on the soils to accept it, and it's going to go into the crushed fill that you're placing as a base. I take it that, Pete, your team will be looking to see where that water goes ultimately?
Absolutely.
Um,
Well, you know, we know where it's going to go.
Ultimately, where it ultimately goes.
It's going to go to the north.
Right. So, north and west, I believe?
Yeah, and I think
Yes,
the
northwest.
important piece to last meeting to this meeting is that we really know where it goes today, and there is actually a defined outlet that exists today, that exists for that wetland feature in the back. So we're planning on maintaining that directional flow, and just need to make sure that we're on the same page as far as the volume. Exactly.
Now, I'll bring up one item, and we discussed it a little bit on Monday, is we know that there's been a berm that has been, well, it was installed years ago. And my understanding is that, and I believe it to be true, that berm blocks the natural flow of water from this particular property.
The berm we're talking about is the adjacent parcel to the north.
Right, the adjacent parcel to, the north. Apparently, there was some issues in the past between property owners, yada, 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 yada. So the berm was installed. Now, it's not right smack on the property line, but it's a little ways off the property line. So one thing that we talked about, and we'll need to get some more legal input, I don't think that should impact the applicant, but I'm struggling with, okay, well, if the water goes where it's going now, is it going to at some point hit that berm and start to back up, and so it's a little,
Hurt the potential success of this project as a store. If we have water backing up, particularly when during freezing times, no one's going to want to go in and slide through a parking lot. That's why I said stormwater has been the driving issue on this, because just the nature of the parcel. In addition, while we haven't had a public hearing yet, we also want to make certain that any of the neighbors around the area, that there's no water that gets pushed back onto their sites either.
Yes, and we discussed that because one of the other concerns with it is with the, I believe it's the transmission place next door, just general repair. That there is some water from their front parking lot that does flow onto this property. So right now, there's, with the way that they've got the site graded, it's graded right up to that property line. So we would end up keeping the water either right on the edge of the property line, which we can't create an issue on the neighbor's property.
Correct.
So we're working with them to basically say you have to bring that water, even if it's 2 feet onto your property, and then direct it into the back. But we can't just grade right up to the property and have standing water on the adjacent property. So again, those are the things that we're working through.
And just for the general audience to understand this, this is often what happens when you have developed sites next to an undeveloped site. Changes occur to developed sites that no one notices because the water's been redirected now to the undeveloped site, and plants take it up, et cetera. So we're ready tonight to declare lead agency and circulate. Before the circulation list, I believe, has 8 involved and 4 interested. But I don't believe that the 4 interested agencies all need a full set of plans. Do we have 8 involved? That was something that was sent to me by Ms. Knapp, that there were, that sounded heavy to me too. Do we have who has the file?
No, I have the file.
Can you see what the list is of the involved agencies?
While we're looking, one thing we still don't have is the archaeological report.
That's right.
There you go.
You addressed the endangered, threatened, and rare species, et cetera, but we didn't get anything. You're within the cone,
Zone.
the zone where the mastodon was found. So we need to have something. We'll be circulating to OPRHP ourselves, but and if they don't respond within 30 days,
Right, it was just something we asked for last time, and
it's the only thing that was left out. Only. And by the way, that was a little bit of overkill. I apologize. I didn't realize you guys were going to hire a biologist to go out there. We just needed to see that you had looked through NYNHP or something to say that there weren't anything there.
We do have it. It's an oversight. We'll make sure that we get it in.
Okay.
It was actually done in the fall last year.
Oh,
So
I thought you did a lot of testing in advance.
so we have it already completed.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
What we didn't do is we didn't submit to, is referred to a SHPO, or we didn't submit, so that we have done, and we're awaiting their comment letter.
So you've already sent it?
Yes, yes, and we'll show you that correspondence.
Wait.
You can still take notes.
Roosevelt Fire District is listed as involved. They're not involved. They're interested only. Fire districts have no permits. Just for everybody to remember, fire districts are never involved. They have no permitting authority. DOT does. Dutchess County Department of Public Works. has
Could
no
they
authority
get
on this
water from-
whatsoever.
Oh, no, it should have been DCWWA.
Yeah, because of, right, of the water,
The only
They're
approval
wrong.
agencies are the New York State Department of Transportation, the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, Dutchess County Department of Health, and
We just reduced that to
Well, we have to send it to
1,
RHP.
2, 3,
DEC for the
4 involved agencies. Department of Health. Why would DEC be an involved agency? Speedies.
It's less, it's less than an acre.
it's less than an acre, so we
It's less than an acre, so there's no,
Oh, the ZBA, we were gonna send it to.
ZBA is on there because of the sign. Right, water and wastewater.
And then VEC was interested. Mm-hmm.
1. They're not, this never is, they're always interested. So 1, because they have no permitting. Well, yeah, but it's interested with maps. They have no permitting. Again, involved are only those agencies that have permitting authority, that everybody else is just interested. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and those would be DCWWA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, because you're going to need a variance for your signage, the Department of Transportation, because you'll be doing work in their right-of-way, as well as Department of Health for approval of septic and water supply. Although I believe you're on town water.
Water's public.
You're already on a water district there. County water, not town water.
Right.
And then the involved agencies would, interested agencies would be Department of Planning under 239M referral, the Fire District, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the Conservation Advisory Council, Individual Environment Committee, the Town of Hyde Park Fire Inspector, and the Town of Hyde Park Police Department. So that's 4 involved and 8 interested. For the interested, I believe that the Visual Environment Committee would only be interested in the elevations, the architectural elevations, because that's what their concern is around town. Maybe landscaping. For the fire inspector and the police department, they would want a copy of the site plan, but there's no reason to add more of the narrative responses, because that's not what they're interested in. They just want to have an idea of what the layout is in case they need to come in for emergency. Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation should be the entire application, I would estimate.
With the report.
With the report, yes. And the Roosevelt Fire District would be the site plan itself, none of the narrative responses. And county planning would want everything, I believe, as much as we can have. Anything that we've seen, they would probably want. Did that help you?
Thank you, I wrote that down.
I kind of babbled that through, I apologize.
So we don't need complete sets for everyone.
Yes, if you got that. Just, if you can label, when I said just architectural, just label visual environment, VEC, that way we'll know who to give each one to.
Okay.
And then who has this,
If you put them in envelopes for each of the agencies, prepackaged, it helps the office keep track of them.
Okay.
it speeds the process. To give you a little inducement there.
Got it.
And
So that I have it correct, it's the DOT, the county, town, ZBA, and those are the 4 approving entities. And then,
wait, not the county, would be, did you say county planning or just
Well,
the
the county
DOH?
planning's gonna get
A full set.
well, I'm talking for county for the sanitary sewer.
Okay, DOH, DCWWA,
Right.
Department of Transportation,
And ZBA.
and ZBA. would be
And
a
then
full
the
set.
4 others that are interested is SHPO,
Right,
the fire department, Roosevelt Fire Department, the police department, and then I have the one on the, and then, well, county planning, but then I also have a conservation council.
Conservation Advisory Council will want to see everything, a full set with reports, because they're looking at environmental impacts, so they'll
Okay.
want to know about the endangered, threatened, or rare species, et cetera, that you supplied.
And
Okay.
the Park Visual Environment.
And the Visual Environment Committee would want elevations only.
And
And the
landscape.
fire.
And landscaping,
inspector.
I'm sorry. Fire department would be like the police, just wanting the site plan so they understand ingress.
It was also fire inspector,
Oh,
right?
fire inspector, right.
So just the site plan also.
Yes, just site plan for the fire inspector. Sorry that got so complicated.
It's okay.
Now, Mr. Ristoliano, do you want to read the resolution?
Resolution typing action declaring intent to serve as lead agency and referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for Dollar General. Resolution 14-7, Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the project as an unlisted action on the SECRA and declares its intent to serve as lead agency in a coordinated review of the project, and 2, directs its secretary to send notice of its intent to all involved and interested agencies. 3, directs its secretary to refer the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to Section 239-M of the General Municipal Law.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. When would you like us to set the public hearing? All the agencies have 30 days in which to respond. We typically wait the 30 days just because otherwise we keep the public hearing open.
Right.
However, there may be neighbors here or neighbors who want to comment about this. So if you'd like for us to set it for 2 weeks, we
Can
can.
we wait until we know that we have the drainage, resolved?
Yes, I suppose we should, because that's what the public will probably comment on most, that and maybe
'Cause I-
traffic.
As I said, I'd plan to contact one of the adjoining, owners who, we know is concerned about the drainage, and I want to explain to him where we are, so
Do you want to
that,
report back to the board in 2 weeks?
Yes.
To recommend when we should set the public hearing then? Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Hemula? We don't want to slow you down, but we also want to make sure all the Ts are crossed and Is
No,
are
that's,
dotted.
that's fine. So we're looking at reporting back at the next meeting to set the public hearing for the first meeting possibly in July.
Only we do not have our regular meeting in July. The first one would be July 3rd, and we couldn't get quorum, so we canceled that when we set up our meeting, so it would be the 17th?
16, I think.
It was the second, I'm sorry, it was the second. So it'd be July 16th.
Okay.
And that's assuming that you think that we have enough
Yeah, I
to
would-
go on to set the public hearing, because the public should be able to see a plan that's reasonably thought
right,
out.
that we're comfortable with. Yeah,
Okay.
I think anyways, this is my recommendation.
You're
I mean,
flying back and forth
Planning
from
board's decision.
Cleveland?
Well, actually, believe it or not, I drove today.
Oh,
I have a meeting with the DOT tomorrow on another project. And
do you mind if I ask how long a
I
drive
probably
that
shouldn't have
is?
said that.
No, do you mind if I ask how long a drive that is?
It was about 8 hours, about 8
Oh.
hours. Well, not too
That's
bad.
not bad.
No, it seems farther than it is.
To me, it does. I think of Cleveland, Ohio as being pretty far away. I hadn't realized that's all it is.
Wasn't too bad. Just had to go through the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, that's right. Geography was not my strong point. Then, just to let you know, you don't have to be here in 2 weeks. We can inform you by email. Mr. Sotero and myself can tell you if he thinks we've gone far enough to set it, and you don't have to be here for just us to set the public hearing. But if you want to be, you can.
Let me throw this one out, and before we agree and vote and everything, we're gonna have to assume that we're gonna work the drainage issue out, because if we don't work this out, then we really don't have a project. And I know that, if we're gonna have neighbors that are gonna talk about stormwater, and we're gonna have other items to talk about, I would really like to get the public hearing portion going. And even though it's gonna have to stay open, and the meeting is in July, you now give me at least some opportunity to address comments and come back in with a stronger, more complete package for that July meeting, versus hearing some of these comments for the first time, then having to probably come back in August.
You don't have to convince me. That's why I suggested doing it in 2
Yeah,
weeks.
so I mean, I would actually prefer to come back in the middle of June, knowing especially that first meeting in July is not gonna happen.
It does give you more time that way to respond to public comments.
And it'll also push my engineer to work with the town engineer to get on the same page and get this addressed before that public hearing.
The only issue is I know Mr. Zotero hates when there's public comment from neighbors. He hates people to say, we don't know the answer yet, because he prefers to have an answer so we can tell any neighbors that this has already been addressed, it's been mitigated this way or solved, whatever. But if you don't have objections.
Well, I'm gonna go meet with the adjoining property owner. I mean, I have down here, I'm gonna have my secretary call, and set up a meeting for when I'm back for next week, so, for early next week, so.
And my understanding is
I plan, to meet with him anyways.
the two items that we're really talking about, that we just need to get better information on, they seem to be solvable. Whether the grading changes are on our property, or if we can work them out on the adjacent property owner's property to convey that water back to where it should go. And then the field location of the pipe, they're reasonable items to have answers by the meeting in June.
Up to you guys. I mean, I'm all right with it.
Good. Let's make a motion to set the public hearing for June 18th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There are three of us who won't be back here that month, including me, so I'll miss any of the discussion, but
Okay.
believe me, I'll be watching it on YouTube, on the town website, so I can figure out what happened in
Sounds
my
good.
absence. So I won't see you then, but I'll see you back in July, I hope.
Very good.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Good
Appreciate
luck
it.
with your drive back.
Did we verify that there was quorum for the June 18th meeting?
We have verified this
Okay.
quorum. However, in the event of illness, there may not be quorum, but I'll have Ms. Knapp in my absence make or actually, I'll still be here. I'll just be packing to go to Europe. I will make certain that there's quorum. If not, then I'll alert you well in advance. But four of my colleagues can be present that night, and that's all it takes for quorum.
Great, appreciate it.
Again, just in case, but if someone falls really ill, we'll let you know.
No promises, I might drive again. Trust me, it's 2 flights to come here, and it takes about 7 hours to hop on 2 flights and connect and layover, so by the time you do that, you can be productive in the car.
You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, Mr. Murphy is leaving the dais tonight. He has another appointment. We tried to get through everything, sorry. The next item on the agenda is MOLT lot line revision. The applicants are not here. I spoke with them today. So just to kind of update everybody, many of us have taken site walks now to the site. I can, as I stated in an email I sent out to my colleagues for notes from the site walk. It's very neatly done. The site has been concreted over. All stormwater is directed into stormwater drains, and then it's piped out underneath, back under Honeywell. It looks like to me pretty adequate screening. There are topographical issues that you can't completely screen out everything because it's just the topography, the nature of it. But per the code, it's been screened adequately. The two issues that I discussed with the MOLT'S today are, the most important is that under our code for scrap yards, the 50-foot buffer, the 50-foot vegetative buffer must be on the commercial side. So since this lot is mixed use right now, both residential and commercial, and they're proposing to create 2 lots, one residential, one commercial, the 50-foot buffer, vegetated buffer, must be on the inside of the property line. As it's currently shown, the new property line is where a fence is, and then the woods, I'll call it, the trees, the vegetation are all probably in many cases more than 50 feet deep, but they're on the other side, they're on the residential side. So what I discussed with the applicants was one solution would be to have their surveyor just move the property line 50 feet, which would basically be to the west and north mostly. While it wouldn't follow the fence, it means then that the fence plus the 50-foot vegetated buffer are on the commercial site. The alternative to that, in order to satisfy our code, would be that they would have to pull all the cars away from the proposed property line or the fence, drill out all the concrete, add soil, and then plant things. And since the stormwater is all directed now into 2 stormwater drains, you really couldn't count on a lot of adequate moisture to water any plants there. Since the trees already exist, I think that that's the neatest solution for them, but they're weighing that. The second issue I discussed with them is that we've been notified by the town clerk that the law that we voted on and requested that the town board pass, such that when a lot line revision takes place and no new buildable lots are proposed, the open space requirement is gone. So I also tell them they do not need to show the open space that's listed there now. They're just weighing their options. Like I said, they may even redraw the property line a little bit differently. So in the meantime, I believe that we're ready to type the action tonight.
Can I say something about this?
Nope. Nope. I apologize, but we're not in a public hearing yet. As soon as
We just want to know where they're going at.
as soon as there's a public hearing, you'll be allowed to say all you want to. But in the meantime, if you want to take a look,
Have the plan
if
out?
you look over at the desk over there, there's plans out for you to take a look at everything. It's just, we're legally not allowed to let people speak because the applicant's not here and we don't have a way of recording it. And just to also tell you, I have to remind everyone, please don't take them with you. Those are our copies in the file, but you're welcome to look at them as much as you want to. You can also, you can come in anytime you want to as well, into the planning board office and take a look at the files, but if you take them, it's like, well, akin to theft, because We don't own them, actually, so. No, ask anytime. It's just, I have to make sure that, for legal purposes, so that we do everything properly, that's all. And I thought maybe you were the neighbors for the last application, to be honest with you. I thought, there's some neighbors here somewhere, so. Anyway, what they're basically doing is, I'll answer it, is they're proposing a new property line where the fence is. And the fence that runs
Between their house and the,
between their house, but mostly it runs parallel to Honeywell. It
Yes.
runs parallel to Honeywell. It goes from the entrance, there's a fence, a stockade fence, and then it curves as Honeywell curves. If you're going back.
Down around the hill.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a green right there, and the fence is along.
Right, that's what they're proposing. And there's some woods on the other side, but the screening has to be on the inside, because the 50-foot vegetative buffer is part of the screening requirement. So if they follow just the fence, there would be no screening on this side of the fence, and it has to be on the inside, on the commercial side. So that's why I said they could either redraw the property line to take advantage of the woods, or they're going to have to come up with another solution.
Right, so there's no expansion of the operation proposed, and there's no new houses proposed at this
Right.
point. They're just splitting the two uses
Uses.
into separate lots.
I just wondered if they were coming out towards the open lots.
No.
That's our concern, we live across the street from there.
Nope.
And we do have a big-
Oh, you're the ones, you probably the ones that you don't see the first part, but you see where it rises, because it's so,
That wasn't there when we moved there.
yeah.
We have an agreement with them, with the town in 1992, that they would not expand that junkyard into that open lot, which is across from our house. That's all we want.
No expansion of the commercial use whatsoever. It's just a separation of the house from splitting the lots into commercial and residential, that's all. But you're welcome to look at the plans, too. They detail it.
No, actually, by what they're doing, they're making the commercial side smaller,
Right.
because that one big area now is going to be two, residential and commercial, without going outside the boundaries.
And also, just so you know, in general, this is called a non-conforming prior existing use. It wouldn't be approved today because it's not allowed in a neighborhood district, or this is Greenbelt. It's not allowed in the Greenbelt, I think. But at any rate, if it's a non-conforming use, the only way they can expand it is through a special use permit. And those have criteria that are set up that basically mostly center on, does it create adverse impacts to the neighborhood? So they would have to overcome a hurdle in order to expand the commercial use. Does that help? Okay. By the way, feel free to contact the planning board office and ask Ms. Knapp for applicants or people questions. Call me all the time. I'm happy to talk, just in the appropriate venues. Okey doke. Thank you. So we'll be looking to them to come back. I think we should wait to set the public hearing until we know what they're proposing to do. But we can, in the meantime, type the action.
Well, so the resolution that's proposed types it and adopts a secret determination of non-significance. So if you want to adopt it, you should review part 2.
Oh, right. Who has this file?
I do.
Okay, oh, you got both part 2s tonight. How fun, Chris.
ding, he's the winner.
Part 2, impact assessment. The lead agency is responsible for the completion of Part 2. Answer all the following questions in Part 2 using the information contained in Part 1 and other materials submitted by the project sponsor,
Stuck twice.
otherwise available to the reviewer. When answering questions, the reviewer should be guided by the concept, have my responses been reasonable considering the scale and context of the proposed action? 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the use of land? No. 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. 5, will the proposed action result in adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. 7, will the proposed action impact existing A, public and private water supplies, B, public and private wastewater treatment utilities? No and no. 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources such as wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. 11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No.
Thank you. And now you may read the resolution.
Do I need to make any changes to this, or no?
Nope.
Resolution typing action and adopting secret determination of non-significance MOLT subdivision, resolution number 14-16, whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby classifies the project as an unlisted action under SECRA for which an uncoordinated review will be conducted, and be it further resolved that the planning board hereby determines that the project as proposed will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So we'll wait to hear from, I think we should wait to hit the public hearing until we know exactly what they want to do. Because that would impact what any member of the public, including the neighbors, would like, I think, would like to see. So they should have the ability to see that. So in the last item on the agenda, or second to last, third to last, Hyde Park United Methodist Church. Everyone had a chance to look at this sign?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The referral's from the ZBA because they need a variance for the cross and the drape.
Flame?
Flame, I think that's a better word for it. So how would you guys like me to respond? I'm going to just go out here on a limb and just say straight out that I don't know that I can approve this sign. It's one of the ugliest ones I've seen in a long time. It's plastic.
Thank
The
you.
sign is actually meant to be lit from the inside, and I think it's not attractive, particularly in this historic area. We're going from a sign that's hand-painted in wood with finials to a sign that's generic plastic and metal. Even if they get the variance, in other words, I don't know that, I think it would be hard for me to vote to approve the sign as proposed.
Agree.
Second.
It's hideous.
I'll even make a
horrible.
third
Well
on it,
said,
because
Frank.
I was going to make the comment that I just don't see the need for this big thing. Churches are not a drive-by item where you need these huge signs. In fact, I happen to attend a church, and there is no sign. Unless you know where to turn off of 9G, you can't even find the church.
Oh.
It's way down on the psychiatric center.
Secret church.
Yep.
Our Lady of the Rosary.
Rosary.
That's a beautiful church.
It's a beautiful church. I mean, do I agree? Yes, it's wonderful to have a little sign that says, oh, by the way, we're going to have a teen something on Friday night, or whatever. But I don't honestly think a sign of this size, nature is needed in this area. My opinion.
Well, then, at least for now, what we need to do is I'll send a letter to the ZBA that we recommend they do not grant the variance approval for this.
It's oversized in my view.
I will put this down to the fact that we also think the sign does not comport with the character of the community, particularly in this area in a historic district.
I mean, just to echo that, we've just spent how much time with some of these recent applicants, you know, making, you know, and they've bent over backwards to, you know, put finials on and to really try to give it that historic look. I just don't get this one.
Thank you. Mr. Signa, you were going to say something?
Yeah, my concern is that the sign, as they're proposing it, could be lit internally, but they're just going to leave the light bulbs out. To me, that is an unneeded expense somehow, that, you know, they're looking at the artistic character, which you folks have so adequately addressed. So I would object to having a sign that had the potential to be internally lit.
It seems to invite someone to go say, hey, we've got to put the bulbs in here.
Someday somebody's going to forget or not know what was discussed.
Which then causes enforcement and compliance problems, because next year, in, I believe, June of 2015, all signs must come into compliance, and internally lit signs are not allowed under our code. So thank you for giving me that direction. We can approve the March 19th Planning Board minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review them?
I have to abstain, I wasn't here.
I have to abstain, I wasn't here.
Is that the one I ran?
Yes?
Do you have a
The other
quorum?
four of you were there. Have you had a chance to review them?
Are these the ones that were sent out like 3, plus weeks ago?
Sent out in March.
It was a ways back, yes.
Okay, because it's been so, I mean, I read them and I thought they were fine, but
I do.
I've read them. Did anybody else need to look at them, just to refresh
I
your memory?
read them when we got them.
Yeah, so we should be
Let
able
me-
to
let
vote
me
on
see
it.
real quick.
There you go.
Thanks.
But while you're looking at those, has everyone had a chance, I know I sent it out late, but that's because we just got word that if we apply, we might get it. The town is seeking a consolidated funding application grant to basically do secret work, such as a generic environmental impact statement, do a sewer study, to take a look at the feasibility of changing the plans. This all goes back to the site you see on the second page, which was a conceptual plan done by Dutchess County Planning for, in essence, taking what we locally sometimes call the old Amish Market Plaza, but Hyde Park Shopping Center to be technically accurate, and changing it, adding more commercial structures, but more importantly, changing the road so that we would actually have a new intersection that would be a four-corner intersection at Crumwald and we'll just call it New Street. We need to also know what would be done through DOT at the intersection of, or the terminus of Pine Woods at Route 9. This would all go into the engineering studies on that. So because the letter is due next week, I just need authorization to send a letter of support rather than actual having to have you review the letter.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I just have a comment on this.
Yes.
The photo on the bottom of the existing conditions was really misleading because you have, I was saying, gee whiz, is that the whole upper area? It's
Yeah.
only that little section. And I think it's going to confuse somebody in thinking that that's all open space right now, which it isn't.
This actually doesn't go into the grant proposal either. This is just, this is, when we send around letters of support, we discovered that it's easier for people to
Oh, yeah.
have a summary
Right.
in which they can write their letters from.
Okay.
And I believe that everybody here knows that this is just a
Fine.
detail of the interior. But I agree with you now that you said that. It's not at all the whole site at all.
No, and it would, because it says existing conditions, and I
Right.
said, wait a minute, we're missing.
I'll discuss that with Emily.
This is more like existing conditions.
Did you vote yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the
I think
motion
we all voted
carried?
yes.
And I would just say that the existing conditions is actually what's on the front page.
Yeah, you can
Right,
really
that's
see
really
it
the
there.
aerial, top-down view. We know what that is.
So has everyone had a chance to look at the March 19th minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Making a motion to approve, noting that Mr. Groninger and I are recused.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0. Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues, very much.